What do you do when a soap batch fails? Are there ways to repurpose the batch and reclaim the investment of time and the money for the supplies and things like that? Or is it just a loss and you need to throw it out and start over? I'm sure that with this failed soap batch, you are probably pretty disgusted with this batch because it was supposed to be better and it just didn't work out. And I'm sure you have been kind of seething about this a little bit, maybe planning its untimely demise. But before you do that, grab your coffee and let's chat about failed soap batches and what you can do with them going forward. So let's chat. So first of all, what is soap failure? People talk to me all the time about, oh, I had a failed soap batch. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to throw it away. And first, let's talk about what is soap failure, because I would say that 90% of soap failure that I get asked about is not that the batch, like the saponification piece, has actually failed. It's just that it didn't behave like you wanted it to, or it didn't come out looking like you wanted it to. Lots of the times, it involves the colors. The colors didn't hold, or they didn't do what I expected them to do. And something to remember when you're dealing with colorants and saponification is not every mica colorant is made for soap making. So if you buy some cheaper mica, like usually it's like a multi-pack off Amazon. If you buy those, I would bet that you have a more than 50% chance that those colors are not going to hold after they've gone through the saponification. So people will call that a failed soap batch. Like it was supposed to be bright pink and it turned kind of pastel pink, or just not as bright as I wanted the colors to be. Again, not necessarily a failure of the soap batch, but kind of a failure of design, or certainly a failure of the colorants, but more kind of failure of knowing what colorants are going to work in soap making and what ones are not. So I wouldn't really call that soap failure. That's just kind of a colorant issue. Also, fragrance not holding through the soap batch. Again, the same thing is true there that's true of the colorants. Not every fragrance is intended for soap making. Sometimes it's as simple as the fragrance isn't going to last. Like you put it in the soap batch, and later on the soap smells like nothing. Well, that fragrance just was not intended for soap making, and it can't survive that reaction. But even worse than that would be that your fragrance caused the batter to behave oddly. Maybe it thinned out, or maybe it went thick really fast. That's called seizing the soap. And again, like it still made soap, it's just that the fragrance caused it to behave oddly. Again, maybe that's a little bit more in the category of failure, but more it was like the soap itself is still good. It's just that it behaved very strangely because of the fragrance you were using. So there's some learning to do on both sides of colorant and of fragrance to make sure you've got stuff that is high quality, that is intended for soap making, and that is going to survive the saponification, either in the brightness of the colors or in the potency of the fragrance. So you have some learning to do there on both of those fronts. But sometimes when people say they have a failed soap batch, it's that the soap set up too soon, or it got thick too fast. And that likely, like I said, is a fragrance issue, but there are some other things that can contribute to that as well. Again, it's not so much that the soap batter failed, but that something else was added to it that caused it to move fast. Or it could be that it wouldn't set up, and they'll call that a failed soap batch. Most of the time, they either haven't blended it long enough, or they just haven't waited long enough to allow it to firm up so they can do whatever they want on the top of their soap batch. So all of these things, I would say, is not so much like a failed soap batch as kind of a procedure issue. Something happened in here that caused it to behave oddly. But in the end, we do still have soap. It just is a funny color, or it doesn't have a smell, or it set up before I had time to form it, or other, like there's other like procedure things that went wrong there. If there was a measurement error and you can identify that, yes, I know my scale was off and I put in way too much lye, or I got my soap all done and whoops, there's my olive oil sitting over there in the microwave or something, things like that where for sure there was an error. Again, is that a failure? Yeah, it is. But there's also there are things we can do with that too. So if we're talking about a measurement error, you left something out and your soap tests hot, like you're testing it with the pH strip and it's lye heavy, it's testing in those blue and purple areas in the lye strip, that again, like failure, yeah, I suppose we'll talk about those coming up here too. But all of these, like they're categorized in people's minds as soap failure, but in the end it kind of did what you it did the best it could with what you gave it to work with. If the colors were not of high quality, the fragrance wasn't intended for soap making, or you left something out, like it did what it was supposed to do. It did what it could with what you gave it. So in all of these cases, kind of like things that are classified as soap failure, I would say never throw soap away. There's always something that you can do with it. So in all of these cases, cut it, let it cure, and give yourself some time and space to think about that soap batch and how you can use it, maybe in a way that you weren't thinking, but there are still ways to use it. So never throw it away. Let it cure, and let's talk then about what you can do with this failed soap batch. So this video is the first video of a series that we're going to do over the next few weeks of what to do with a failed soap batch. I'm going to give you several ideas of things that you can do with that soap to repurpose it, to reclaim those ingredients and that time, and kind of give it maybe something that you weren't thinking of initially, but we can still use that soap in other ways. So first, what do you do with the soap? You poured it in the mold. Let's say the colors just all turned brown. Something happened here and your colors didn't hold at all, and now you're frustrated. Or maybe it's a soap batch that there was a measurement error in and it's really sticky, and like what are we gonna do here? How are we gonna handle this? So the first thing you need to do is you need to get it out of the mold. Now, if you have just poured this, it's going to need to sit for a couple days, 2 or 3 days in the mold. Just let it set up as best it can. Let it do whatever it's going to do. I would say 3 days from pouring, go back to it and say, okay, we got to get this out of the mold. If it will, if you have a silicone mold and you can pull the sides away and it's okay, even if it's a little sticky in there, you think you can get it out okay, that's fine. Go ahead and unmold it as you normally would. But if it's really sticky, like maybe we have too much oil in here, or we forgot, I don't know what even that would be. But if you're going to have trouble unmolding this batch, do something I call the freezer trick. Take the whole soap batch, mold and everything, and put it in the freezer for 30 to 60 minutes. This will harden up just the very outside layer of the soap, and you're going to be able to get that mold off more easily, especially if you're pulling the sides away from it and it's going, that sucking sound, from the mold pulling away from the soap. Especially if you're getting that, or you can see it kind of sticking to the mold. Put the whole thing in the freezer for 30 to 60 minutes and then try unmolding it again. If it's still sticky and you can hear it like that, put it back in the mold in the freezer for another 30 to 60 minutes. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you can unmold it. The mold will pull away cleanly and you'll be able to pop it out, and you'll get the corners and everything to come along with it. So that's the first trick, is whatever's happened to this batch, get it out of the mold and then get it cut. If you have a multi-bar cutter, no matter what it looks like, run it through the cutter and then set the bars out so that they can cure and dry. Now, if you have, let's say, your soap batch got way too hot and kind of bubbled over and stuff, like this is not a lovely batch of soap. If you can still run it through your cutter, do that. You want to get it down to 1-inch slices if you can. If it's so much of a mess that you're like, I don't even want this touching my cutter, just use a knife and approximate 1-inch slabs, and then set those away somewhere so that they can cure and dry. You want to let this cure for the full 6 weeks of cure time for soap, just like anything else. Just because something has gone wrong in this batch does not mean that we get to skip this step. Any soap that has just been made still has active lye in it for a period of time. We have to let that process finish, and we have to let the soap do whatever it's going to do during the curing process. It might still be kind of a soft soap when we get to the end, but you want to give it that full time to cure, to finish the saponification reaction, to get as dry as you can have it, as dry as it's going to be, so then we can move on and do something else with it. So you don't get to skip this step. Even though we're going to repurpose this, we do still need to have it fully cured. So just let them sit aside, put them in a little cardboard box and just set them aside somewhere. I tell people in our soap making membership, you need to set it somewhere and just let it be until you can stop being mad at it. And that sounds kind of funny, but I have soap batches where I am so frustrated with how it turned out. Maybe it's just cosmetic, and maybe it literally did a boil over on me and I'm really just mad at this soap. Set it aside, let it cure until you can stop being mad at it, and then you can look at it more objectively and develop some ideas for what can you do with this soap. Even though it's not going to be what you wanted it to be, how can we take this soap and still turn it into something fun? So half the battle when we're dealing with a failed soap batch is dealing with our own disappointment. You expected better and it just didn't happen. So, but it doesn't mean that you can't use it. So just let it sit while you cool off and think about what can you do, how can you still use this soap batch. Now, when your failed soap batch it's out of the mold, it's cut, it's cured, it's dried for 6 weeks. When we've gotten through that process, I want you to take a couple bars of this soap and run it through a cheese grater. Shred it up. Make little soap shreds out of this bar. Just make a pile of shreds and then put those in a container or something else. Once you shred them, they're going to be kind of moist again, so they're going to need to dry a little bit longer after that point. But make a pile of shreds and then think about, now, what could you use this soap batch for, because it's in a different form than it was earlier. Think about this. You could sprinkle it in your bathtub. Now, you're not going to want to do this if you have a tub with jets, because those shreds don't like melt right into the water right away. It takes a little bit, and you wouldn't want to get those like slimy shreds in your jets. So you wouldn't want to use it there. But if you have just a normal bathtub with water in it, just sprinkle some in. Sprinkle some in your kids' bath or your grandkids or whatever, and just let them feel that goat milk loveliness on their skin, even just through the water. So think of using it in the bathtub. Think of using it as a foot soak. Get a dish pan, just a cheapy dish pan, fill it with hot water and sprinkle some shreds in it, and then just sit while you're watching TV or reading a book or whatever, and just put your feet in the water. And you'll feel the shreds for a little while, but eventually they kind of melt into the water, and now you've got this lovely foot soak that's going to help soften skin and help deal with typical like foot issues or like foot skin issues there. So try a little bit of it that way. See if you like it like that. Or what about washing your dishes? Have your dishcloth and just take a little bit of the soap shreds and put them in the dishcloth and kind of fold it over so you've got a hold of them, and use that now to wash your dishes. And now you've got this, it foams right up, it lasts a long time, and you're going to be able to wash dishes with this soapy dish rag that you made with the soap shreds from your failed soap batch. So those are just a couple ideas of what you can do with those soap shreds once you've got them all shredded up. You might come up with even more. Think about how can you use this soap in a way that's different than you would like a bar soap, or that might even be hard to use a bar soap for. What's possible now that you have this soap in shred form? So here's a bar of soap that just kind of got smushed coming out of the mold. And we're going to do the SHREDS trick on this soap. I'm just going to take this soap and grate it just like you would a block of cheese. And depending on how dry your soap is, will determine how much mess it makes on the shredder. But you can see it goes pretty quickly. There we go. Be careful at the end that you don't catch your fingers in here. You don't want to cause any injury. And now I have this fun pile of soap shreds to mess around with. This is another one of the beautiful things that you can start to engage in when you are a soap maker. Not only are you making lovely bars of soap for people to use in the shower or beside the sink or whatever, but you also have the ability to experiment with other things that are possible because you have a high quality soap at your disposal. Now, I shared one idea here to shred it up. And if you have a failed batch of soap somewhere, I would encourage you to try this today. Make sure it's cured. Make sure it's done. It's drying. It's ready to go. But take a bar, take a couple bars, take a couple blobs if it didn't come apart in actual bars, if it was some other form. But just shred up a couple of those and have it in a container somewhere where you can experiment with some different things that you can do with this. It's really interesting how many different cleaning products and skincare products and even hair and other things can be replaced when you have this high quality soap. So I love having permission to experiment. I love having permission to try different things and knowing I have a high quality thing here that I'm experimenting with, but trying it in different ways. Like the idea of washing your dishes. I know a lot of you are saying, I have never tried to wash dishes with my goat milk soap or my handmade soap. Well, give it a try. Now, on one hand, the dishes don't care whether you're using a high quality soap on them or not, but your hands do. And I think if you have dry skin issues, think about your hands are right in that dish soap as well. If you're using typical squirt in dish soap, from the store. Well, why not replace that with something more high quality? And if you have a failed soap batch anyway, why not repurpose that soap and do that? Try washing the dishes and just keep your hands from being in that detergent anyway. It's just a really great opportunity to try something new, try something different, and maybe even just have it around in case something shows up, maybe like a laundry issue or something else where you're thinking, I'm going to have to deal with this stain or whatever it is, but I have this thing. Let's try it and let's just see what happens. I had a situation like that come up and surprise me one day. This was years ago. But I have a daughter with very blonde hair, and she wanted her hair to be purple. And we decided that was okay. She could do that if she wanted to. So she decided to do that at home. And if any of you have done really bold hair color, you know that for the first little bit, when you wash your hair, that color will come out. Well, she was, the bathroom that she was using had a fiberglass shower that had some cracks in the bottom. And we had it repaired. So there was a repair surface in the bottom of that bathtub. Well, and there's a shower curtain, and she kept the curtain closed most of the time. Well, I don't remember what I was doing, but I was needing to get into that shower. So I pulled the shower curtain back, and the whole bottom of the tub was electric purple. And that's not the color the tub was supposed to be. That's not the color her bathroom was or anything. And I remember standing there and just going, I'm going to have to think about this a little. So I just shut the shower curtain and I stepped away and kind of gathered myself for what am I going to do to try to clean this shower, try to get the purple out of the shower. So I think I took a shower myself and then came back later to kind of look it over and try to decide what I was going to do. I was thinking I was going to have to pour bleach in there or something else to try to get this color out of that repair surface in the bottom of the shower. Well, I looked in the shower and there was a round bar of soap, goat milk soap that I had made sitting in the bottom of the shower. And my first thought was, doggone it, don't you guys remember that you're supposed to put the soap, stand it up, don't leave it in the bottom. It's going to deteriorate and melt all over everything, and it needs to be up where it can be dry. You're wasting it. I was thinking all the mom thoughts, chastising my kids about taking care of these soap bars. So I reached down into the tub and picked up the bar, and underneath the bar was a completely white circle in the bottom of the tub. And I went, wait a second, hold on. Goat milk soap will take hair color out of the bottom of a tub. Let's use that. So I went and got my container of soap shreds that I had, and I just sprinkled soap shreds. I put a huge layer in the bottom of that tub and just ran some water over it, and I let it sit. I think we let it sit even for like a day or maybe a couple of days. I'm not sure how long it was. But I just let it sit in there, and then we went in with a scrub brush, and all that purple color came up. And that was something like I would never have thought, just in general, I would never have thought to try it, except that it happened by accident, and that sparked my thinking to say, wait a second, if it would work in this one little spot, I'll bet it would work for the whole thing. Let's take my soap shreds and see what we can do here. So you might find stuff like that where all of a sudden there's a mess you weren't planning on, or there's some cleaning challenge that you just kind of stumble into. If you have these soap shreds ready to go, they're super easy to take and just try in different things and see what might happen. See how you might find a brand new use for your soap shreds that you have because you had a failed batch. Failed soap batches most of the time are not fails. They're just disappointing. If the soap is lye heavy, however, that's a different issue, and we're going to talk about what you can do with that soap in an upcoming video. But if it's just an ugly soap that you're frustrated with and just a little upset with and wondering what to do with, using the SHREDS trick can help transform that entire batch into something that's kind of intriguing and exciting and certainly useful, and something that you can enjoy using and experimenting with. That'll be way more fun than the ugly soap batch was. So that's your first idea for what to do with your failed soap batch. In our next videos, we're going to experiment with some other ideas on what to do with soaps that you might call a failed batch, but really is just soap that it's going to need a different purpose than what you were thinking for originally. We're going to help you think of those ideas in our upcoming videos. So we will see you there.